So today I'm on the Girdner Trail at the Sedona Cultural Park in Sedona, Arizona, and I'm just doing a small plein air study looking out into Boynton Canyon, Long Canyon, that beautiful red rock wilderness in the background, and then just some beautiful juniper trees and manzanita and some lovely grasses and brush in the foreground. And the focus of this plein air is just loosening up, painting in a very uninhibited way, just kind of direct response to light, color, energy. And this is really exciting. I wanted to focus on bold brush marks, heavy alla prima, wet into wet, and it went really well. Sometimes it doesn't, so it was fun to just kind of loosen up a little and create something beautiful. So the main aspect of this painting is finding the area of focus, which I'll be going over, but it's a particular spot more centrally located in the painting, where the last light is kind of lighting up some rock features, and then you have a really beautiful warm light on two of the central mass trees. So really excited to share this plein air adventure with you, and thanks so much for being here. This is my viewfinder, which helps me to crop the scene, and you can see I can set it at 9:12, which is the panel that I'm working with. I believe there's also an option for 8:10, or you can just pull the tab all the way out for a nice square format. Anyways, I'm moving right into my wash. I've got like the CAD yellow medium and CAD red medium, and I'm wiping it down, so I'm picking up most of the pigment there. And now that I've stained my panel, I do this because it just helps me to kind of gauge the colors and the values more without that really strong white. And it also acts as a unifier. And I'm laying in my sketch with my alizarin crimson and a little bit of ultramarine blue. So this is a process that I do often with this wash, and then this sketch where I lay in the main masses. And I can never stress the importance of keeping this part of the design very loose, and you're just looking for that main design or composition. So you're really just thinking about the main masses. One of my faults maybe is putting in more lines than I need to. I'm really just going to go over all this with my block-in colors. Sometimes it can be helpful though, especially if you're going to leave some of those contour lines in to illustrate maybe a crack in the rock or an edge. Really kind of just diving right into the block-in because I'm setting up here, and what attracted me to the scene was these trees that are kind of standing out a little further than the rest. They're like a varied group mass, and they make a really nice cluster. And right behind them is two of the last features that are getting hit with the light. The rest is really just dropping into shadow. So pretty quickly I knew exactly what the focal point of this would be, and that is just what is allowing me to dive into this piece with confidence, really bold and loose brush marks, because I know exactly what I'm painting and I know what I want the viewer to focus on. So that's really allowing me to paint in a very energetic, emotive, expressive way, because I'm not kind of, I guess, bored by what I'm painting. I'm really excited about catching this light effect. And I can just really feel like the wild, ancient energy of those canyons beyond. Believe we're looking into Boynton Canyon in the distance. And then you've just got these gorgeous foreground golden grasses, juniper trees, manzanita bushes, and all sorts of the native plant species. And I'm keeping in mind to vary my greens, keeping the bushes that are more towards the front in those warmer greens, and then pushing more of like the blues and the reds as they go further back. And the light will continue to drop and be more dramatic. And I am painting pretty thick for the block in, but I'm still not going in like super alla prima impasto like I will at the end. So I'm allowing myself, a little bit of that ability to refine. And you can see that I'm actually layering in some of those highlights. Really, with this painting, I'm doing less of an overall block in, and I'm kind of just going in and directly painting it, because I really want to have that energy, that feeling of, capturing what I'm seeing and putting it directly on the panel. Sometimes when you're painting the light, you almost just feel like a vessel for it, and you have this kind of excitement, and there's this immediacy to seeing a color and a texture and wanting to just communicate that as it's happening. There's this raw kind of intimate quality, this very tactile quality of the paint that kind of draws you in on its own. So you'll kind of see I'm all over the place. I'm not really doing my usual, doing the darks first and adding medium and then light. Like I'm just painting the light as it's happening, and it's super expressive. But I have enough control and I have enough idea of what I'm doing that I can do this with confidence. So I'm still leaving those areas where the dark is going to go in. And where those shadow grasses are, they're actually more of a middle value. So I can, paint into that lighter value without worrying about it not being the right shade. So, those foreground grasses are just super lit up. And then you've got that kind of blue-gray shadow masses of grass that are popping up there. And really just varying my brush marks, going to the side and up and down, and not painting every individual blade of grass, but kind of showing where they pop up into the tree line. And then just a super slick drop in of that lit red rock earth in the foreground. I'm also making sure to separate the brushes that I'm using so that I can paint in this very thick alla prima manner. Because really, the way that I'm painting in the time of day, there's not a lot of time to clean my brushes in between and not muddy them and mix everything up. So that's another great tool when you're painting this way, kind of wet into wet, is separating your brushes. This brush is for this color and this value or this section of the painting, and doing a little bit of a block in for the background cliffs, dropping in that very atmospheric blue shadow. And doing this obviously less thick than the foreground. Really roughly finding that ridge line, which is very much undulating and varied. And you can see the shadow is very visible. Like, you can see so much into the shadow. You can see where there's the cooler blue notes and the really cool red, gray, violet gray. And then dropping in some warm tones too for the sandstone that's closer towards the top. And as the blue gets closer towards the trees, it kind of gets a little more saturated. And also there are some contours and planes where there are those pops of blue. But wanting to keep this band of the background cliffs feeling very light and airy. They appear dark to the eye when you kind of isolate them, but they're actually very light in relation to everything else in the painting. So, how do I communicate that piece dropping into shadow while also keeping the laws of atmosphere present so that you can feel the expansive quality, and so that you can recede with it into this distance. And I'm just mesmerized by how the tops of these, last little cliffs are right above this cluster of trees, and it really just brings your eye kind of middle and to the left, but there's this beautiful focal point where it almost feels like there's kind of a circular pattern, like there's this portal for the eye to land into. So what I love is that you've got that lighter sandstone and the more red sandstone standing out and kind of grouped together. So with each tier, I'm going to make sure that I'm pushing these back so that they're receding from each other and separated. But you can tell from the background, you can see where I'm painting those features. That light is just like a curtain just dropping right over it. And yeah, I've basically, I did that whole painting in a very short amount of time. And blocking in the sky so that I can redefine my contour and reassess some of those colors and values relative to the sky. The sky at this time of day is very light blue, almost with a little bit of yellow, because you have that low angled sunlight. And I'm just so happy that I could, be walking down this trail and just be totally called to this aspect of the landscape, and that I could, get it down. For me, that's so much of what plein air is. You're telling the story of what inspired you. And, it's like I saw this moment and I wanted to capture it. And there's just something so like satisfying about that experience. But I definitely have just, very minimal refining touches. So I am definitely coming back for another session just to kind of clean it up a little and model those shapes a little bit more, because I really just had a moment with them before they went more so into shadow. And now I'm really just kind of adding even more of those end of day highlights to the trees, where it's a very orange light on this one in particular, the taller one. The one in front of it has a little more yellow or saturated green. And that really helps to push the background back. Because even though I, want those last features in light to kind of pop, I don't want them to compete with the foreground. So, even though I put in my light pattern for the trees, I'm just, really thick impasto paint on top of that, and really, really showing those highlights to where they're just getting drenched in light. So you can see now where I've come back to just make these refining touches at the same time of day. I was so close. And sometimes it happens like that. Sometimes you get it all in the session, and honestly, I could have left it, but was just feeling so inspired by this time of day that I wanted to come back and have a moment of seeing what this light in the background is doing and make out some of these shapes a little bit more. So I've added a little bit of the lighter sandstone to the top of that more triangular rock, and I've added a little bit of dark on the edge of it to make it feel like it's kind of turning, at an angle, so it's not reading as flat. And just continuing to model some of these background shapes a little bit more. Something else worth mentioning is that when you have like a shadow and light meeting, there's usually like a middle ground or a middle value where there's also a bit more saturation happening too. So you can see like where there's that pop of middle value red in between the shadow shapes, and orange between more of the yellow and the blue. And that just kind of provides like a natural sense of gradation for the eye. And I also really love how almost loose and abstract some of the cliff areas are. And I don't want to lose that quality. I still want some, shapes to be left to the imagination, and also by kind of blurring out those features a little, the eye naturally wants to be at the focal point where it's a little more crisp and defined. So you're just kind of right there where I want you to be in the painting, where where I stopped in my tracks, my eye landed there. So I'm trying to recreate that experience, where you're just walking on a trail at this time of day, and it's like that light just rinses through you, and you focus on something and everything else falls away, and there's this beautiful quality of real presence. And you can tell on the panel too how I'm falling more into shadow as well. The sky is getting a little bit more titanium white, just giving it some of that beautiful texture. Lately, I've really been enjoying textured skies, so not blending a lot, really like, taking the blue and white and yellow and just really like doing a lot of mark making. And yeah, that's the finished piece.